Hello, and welcome to the pilot episode of the Birth Equity for Black Women podcast. I'm your host, Hillary Weber. The main goal of this podcast, as a component of the Birth Equity for Black Women campaign, is to bring awareness to the maternal mortality rate crisis in America, particularly among Black women and mothers. Our hope for this podcast is that it will reach nurses and other medical providers to humanize and give a voice to these marginalized patients. In each episode, we will have a conversation with a Black woman or a Black birthing person about their experiences through the birthing system in America. As you may have inferred, I, the host, am not a Black woman, although I am a woman who has been through the birthing system twice in America and have my own experiences. My goal is to not speak over the voices of those most affected by this crisis. Our goal is to give these people voices. The maternal mortality rate crisis in the United States is one that is inexcusable. The USA ranks as the 40th safest country to give birth, and is among a group of 3 other countries that have seen an increase of maternal death instead of following the global trend of decrease. 17 to 20 per 100,000 pregnancies end in maternal death, with 41.7 per 100,000 cases for non-Hispanic Black women. The numbers for white women, though still not great, are significantly less, coming in at 13.4 per 100,000 pregnancies. That means that Black women are 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related complications than that of their white counterparts. And this is true across the board. It isn't determined by socioeconomic status, marital status, or even education level. It's estimated that about 60% of Black maternal death is completely preventable and due to medical negligence. We also recognize that the consequences of medical racial biases are probably not intentional. That's why they are called implicit or unconscious bias, after all. Our hope is that as healthcare providers become aware of the racial discrimination that is running rampant in our medical system, that medical providers will think differently about their marginalized patients, and these shocking numbers of maternal death will decrease. I was privileged to speak with Laini Angelos this evening. Laini does happen to be a really good friend of mine and was gracious enough to speak with me. She currently resides in New York City with her husband, Nick, and her 11-month-old son, Nicholas, who is absolutely adorable, by the way. We hope you enjoy our conversation. Well, thank you so much, Laini, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. We are going to just dive right in. Would you please tell the audience kind of your background and a little bit of like where your birthing story happened?
So my background. So I am 29 years old. Married. I am African American. I don't know how much background you need, but hopefully that's
that's great. No, that's good.
That's good. And I feel like where my birthing story began, I don't know. I think I just had been married for 6 years before we decided to start trying for a baby, and just felt like the time was right, and just that was kind of it. I think once we actually became pregnant, like I became pregnant, that's when, I really actually started thinking more and more about it all. I don't know how much I did like actually prior, to it actually happening.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what like emotions did you feel when you found out you were pregnant?
Yeah, good question. I a lot, I feel like the initial like, oh, we're pregnant, it's really, it's an exciting moment, right? You've been trying, like finally happened. And then like kind of once that like high kind of dies down, you kind of realize like, oh gosh, like I'm going to be raising a human being, and just trying to figure out how to just how you're going to manage that, like, am I actually ready? Do I know what I'm doing? We found out we were having a boy, and I feel like that brought up different emotions than I thought it would have been compared to if it was a girl. And I know we'll kind of get into race maybe a little bit later. And I think just having a son that was going to be half black, half white, and being a boy just brought a whole different set of emotions as part of just like that whole finding out I was pregnant and being pregnant.
Yeah, I can only imagine how conflicting that might feel. And how was your birthing experience overall? Did you experience any medical discrimination?
Yeah, so I'd say overall, I had a good experience, but that's because I feel like I made a great effort to make sure that my experience was going to be good. And I did feel like I did like have some discrimination. I remember, so this is like during the thick of the pandemic, right? I mean, we're kind of still in the thick of the pandemic, but this is, in the middle of 2020, my baby was born December 2020. So I'm like 20 weeks pregnant, and, we're in the middle of COVID. I'm going in for an ultrasound, and this is like the ultrasound where they're going to, I think they call it like the anatomy scan. So they're going to be, checking all the baby's parts, making sure everything's there. And I have to go into this appointment by myself. My husband's just waiting for me in the parking lot. And so it's already kind of an emotional thing just as it is that I have to be going through this all by myself. Yeah. When in my mind, I would have been having my partner there with me. So anyway, I go into this ultrasound, and everything checks out. Everything's good, except for like my placenta was a little bit low. So it was covering my cervix. And they gave me that news, which like, they're like, it's going to be fine. Like 90% of the time it corrects itself. But still, like, even though I knew I was fine, I was still a little bit like shaken by the news, Yeah. And then I didn't have my husband there, with me. And Absolutely. So they gave me this news, and another doctor came in to kind of explain a little bit more about this. And so she says, after this ultrasound, you're going to go meet with, my actual doctor that I met with, as, each month. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that I was supposed to schedule an additional appointment with the ultrasound. I thought it was like the ultrasound and I would be visiting the doctor. Like, I thought that was all one appointment. I didn't realize I had to schedule 2 appointments. So anyway, I kind of explained that to her. And the doctor says, all you people care about is, the ultrasound. All you care about is just seeing your baby on the screen. That like visiting your doctor and, having those checkups is just as important. And I remember I was like, I'm at a university hospital. So there's a medical student in there with me too. And I remember all of us were like, oh my gosh, like, what do you mean by you people? And in the moment I didn't say anything because I was like really, really shocked. And I felt like that was kind of just like, I wouldn't say the start, but that was kind of like the biggest thing for me of just, when you say that word, when you say those words, like you people, what do you mean? Yeah. You people as in just all mothers, or you people as in you as a Black mother? All I care about is seeing my baby, and I don't care about, his health in utero, So I feel like that was kind of an experience that has really stuck with me, through it all, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm so sorry that happened. That does not sound like it was fun at all. And that is very shocking. Is there a specific medical provider that made your experience having Nicholas positive? And what did that provider specifically do that made a difference?
Yeah, so I had one doctor who I feel like, made every appointment just awesome. And I think, I actually told her this, like at the end, like after I'd come back for like my 6-week appointment, I let her know, I said, hey, I said, every single time I met with you, the first thing she would do when she would come into the exam room, like she would just go and sit down. She would sit down and she would say, okay, what questions do you have for me? And wow. I really appreciated not only the fact that she like wanted me to ask questions and she was listening, but the fact that she just like came in and like sat down. So like that like signaled to me that, hey, I'm here and I'm going to take the time to listen to you, instead of like some other doctors where I'm not saying you have to sit, but I just feel like compared to just walking in and standing up the whole time, it just makes it seem like you're anxious to get out of the room. Like the fact that she would take the time to just sit down. Hey, what questions do you have for me? I feel like really went a long way of just like calming my nerves and actually feeling like, it doesn't matter how long this appointment takes. I can ask whatever questions I want. So yeah, I feel like that was huge for me. And that really made my experience for every visit, just way better.
That's great. I love a supportive medical provider for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
What would you say if you could tell white nurses and white medical providers that interact with Black patients on a daily basis? Like, what would you say to them if you could say one thing?
Ooh, I feel like picking one thing. Oh, that's so hard.
Or a few things, whatever.
it might be a few things mixed in one.
Fine.
I would say, so maybe two things. So I would say listen and like believe, like trust, I feel like just so often in life, like just being a minority in general, like people just dismiss your experiences, whether it's in the medical field or just in your everyday life. It's just so easy to just dismiss that discrimination or racism even exists. So just the fact, like, if I can just come in and tell you, hey, like, I'm feeling this way, don't just dismiss that. There are so many women out there, Black mothers who just, who come in telling their doctors that, hey, I'm, maybe having chest pain or having whatever. And people will just say, oh, that's just all a part of pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And then before you know it, they die, or their baby dies, So I think just being able to listen and just understanding that already minorities are dealing with the fact that like people aren't listening and people are not believing them when they speak. So if you can just do that, I bet it would change people's experiences a lot.
Learn more about the Birth Equity for Black Women campaign, or to learn how to be a nurse that makes a difference, please visit the website in our show notes. Thank you.